I take it back, I don't know that hard, bro. They used to look around the boy, wouldn't raise their head. Now they looking at the boy like the main event. He don't even got a rap sheet, looking like a mathlete. How the fuck is he the one who coming with the crack? We like, who knew?
It's been a long time, wiffle enthusiasts. I haven't done a video in a few weeks. Week 10 is now over and in the books. The All-Star game is in the books. Now it's time for some playoff wiffle ball here in the Griffle Ball League. It's been a long season, but we finally found our 4 playoff teams. The standings go: Ninjas are 14-6, the Taka Drivers are 13-7, the Gas House Gorillas are 12-8, the Stallionaires are 9-11. That record could have been a little bit better. The Lightning and the Bird Gang were eliminated. The Lightning were 7-13, and the Bird Gang were 5-15. So our 4 playoff teams in the round 1, it'll be a best of 5. The number 3 seeded Gas House Gorillas, our 3-time defending GBL champions, will take on the new team into the bunch, the Taka Drivers, who had a great first season in the league and are awarded with a playoff appearance, and they'll be the 2 seed. And then we have the Stallionaires, who went to the World Series last year. They're the number 4 seed, taking on the number 1 seed, Nighttime Ninjas, who pretty much dominated the whole season through just hitting the ball as far as they possibly can. But first, before we get into the predictions, I want to go for each series. I'm going to break down some of the more important parts and components of the series for each team to win. So first, we're going to start with the first 2 games on Sunday, which will be the Gas House Gorillas and Taka Drivers. Taka Drivers will be at home for both of these games, so they have an advantage there already. During the season, these 2 teams split their games, and if you look back at the score, the Gas House Gorillas started off fast in the first game. They won the first game 11-1, and then they lost the second game 1-0. If I recall, Ryan Bogus hit a walk-off home run to win that game. And then the third game they played, Gas House Gorillas won 5-2, and then the fourth game, Taka Drivers won 3-2. So besides the one blowout, these games have been relatively close. And it looks like Taka has had trouble scoring during the season. They've had only 7 runs in 4 games against Gas House. So Jim Tucker could be causing problems with them, and so could Radishak and Gallagher. But before the season ended, Taka Drivers are coming in on a 7-game winning streak. They're riding the pine hot right now. So let's see if they can carry that momentum of the 7-game winning streak into the playoffs and try to get to their first GBL championship in their first season in the league. That would be something special. Speaking of some of their players, Jackson Buzia led the league, won the batting title this year with a .523 batting average. He also won Manager of the Year, and his teammate Ryan Bogus won Rookie of the Year for his outstanding performance on the hitting and on the mound this season. I think it was more for on the mound because he was one of the more clutch pitchers they had. And then for the Gas House Gorillas, like I said earlier, Jim Tucker led the league with 7 wins, and he also won the Cy Young Award this year. So Taka's going to have to go up against the Cy Young Award winner. And then Ryan Gallagher will play in his first postseason since 2011. So he hasn't even been there for any of the Gas House championships. So this will be the first one he could win. We'll see what happens. Hopefully it's good. Hopefully it's bad. We'll never know. During the season, like I said earlier, they had some trouble scoring against Gas House. Only 7 runs in 4 games. If they're going to try to win these games, they're going to have to pick it up a little bit. They're going to have to score more runs. Because I don't believe 1-0 is going to win one of these games again. It could, but in a 5-game series, I'm pretty sure Taka Drivers would rather take multiple runs scored and 3 wins over 2 wins winning 1-0 and losing the series. So I'm pretty sure the Taka Drivers are going to have to hit the ball, but the Taka Drivers can get on base. They've led the league with 82 base on balls. So they're getting on base a lot, but their on base percentage is only a few points higher than the Nighttime Ninjas at .512. So I'm going to be showing the numbers across the screen as a comparison between the both teams as I'm doing this too, if you haven't already noticed. It's going to be rough for both of these teams. This is a really big first round matchup for both of these teams. They both split the season series. I'm not saying the other series is just as tough, but this one's going to be just as tough as well, with the first team making their first playoff appearance and then the Gas House Gorillas trying to win their 4th championship in a row. So these two teams are polar opposites. One team is trying to break into the GBL and take the league by storm in its first season, and the Gas House Gorillas are trying to keep the status quo of the Gas House Gorillas being the best team in the GBL, which has been the case for the last 3 seasons, and they've been up there for even before that as well. They've made the playoffs every year since the GBL is formed, so they have a lot of experience going into the playoff time, while the Taka Drivers do not, because they have 3 rookies, and Jackson Buzia is only in his 2nd year. But if you've watched them play this year, they're definitely playoff caliber and championship caliber team. They're one of the most complete teams in the league. They can hit, pitch, and field with the best of them. So if you could do all 3 of those things at a good rate or above average rate, you're going to be good. And they've done it really good this season, especially with their numbers hitting 378 and having the best ERA pitching staff in the league at 2.88. They're going to be tough to beat, even for a team like Gas House, who's won 3 titles in a row. So for Gas House to win this series, they're going to have to get some outstanding pitching on the mound. Like, obviously from Jim Tucker. He's done it all season, so that could happen. But they're going to have their bullpen and their second starter be just as good as Tucker if they want to shut down Taka. Because some of these games were really close scoring during the regular season, so they're going to have to shut them down completely. They did during the regular season, but they only managed to win 2 of those games. So Radishak's going to have to find his stroke again. He had an ERA plus 4 this year after winning reliever of the year in 2014. And Gallagher's been good on the mound. I'm going to call him my X factor for the Gas House Gorillas. He hit 265 with 5 home runs and 11 RBIs during the season, and he was 2-3 with a 3.40 ERA with 16 strikeouts. So on the mound, he was doing pretty well. But on the plate, he's going to need to step up his batting average. He needs to get on base a little bit more for the Gas House Gorillas if they stand a chance to get in. They can hit. They're one of the best hitting teams in the league, especially with the best lefty in the league and the only lefty in the league, Jeremy Radishak, and our commissioner. He's going to have to find a way to carry his team to victory, especially if the other parts of his team fall apart. He's going to have to do something. But I expect them to come with their A game, and I expect this to be a really good series. But for them to win, I believe all 3 players need to be at their exact best to win against the Taka Drivers. And for the Taka Drivers to win this series, they're going to need to hit a little bit more. Scoring only 7 runs in 4 games may get it done during the regular season, but in a 5-game series, you could be eliminated by that time already. So I feel like they need to score some more runs, play some more runs. They have been becoming more patient at the plate during the entire season, so that's giving them more people on base, which giving them more runs. So it feels like they're almost waiting to get on base to waiting for that one big hit. But sometimes that big hit doesn't come, and they might only score 1 or 2 runs during the game, and that sometimes could be enough in wiffle ball. But I think against the Gas House Gorillas, it will not. So they're going to just definitely hit and get on base. And for the X factor, speaking of hitting, I'm going to call Chris Bartley the X factor for the Taka Drivers. They want to win this series. And he started off the season really slow, but picked it up, and he's hitting 347, 9 home runs, and 31 RBIs in the season. I think top 5 in RBIs, if I'm not mistaken. And on the mound, after they sat Ryan Bogus, he's 3-1 with a 3.33 ERA on the mound. So he's been picking up his play of lately. Could have been nominated for Rookie of the Year. But Ryan Bogus ended up winning with a whole body of work as well. So I'm going to call him my X factor for this series. The Taka Drivers to win this game, they're trying to hit, and they're going to need him to step up in big places. Like I said earlier, Buzz was named Manager of the Year, Bogus was named Rookie of the Year, and Tucker was named Cy Young. So a bunch of award winners come into play in this first series. So it's going to be a really fun series to watch between the Taka Drivers and the Gas House Gorillas. But my prediction, though, as tough as it is to predict the season on a week-to-week basis, the playoffs are a different monster. Anything can really happen. But I believe that with great pitching and the timely hitting I just talked about, the Taka Drivers can win this series despite their opponent being the 3-time defending champions. I have the Taka Drivers winning this series in 5 games and moving on to the GBL World Series. That's a shocker, but I'm going to go with it. I really like the Taka drivers this season. So, like what I've seen, I feel like they can do it, and I feel like they're going to move on. Enough said about that. Let's move on to the next series. The number 4 Stallionaires at 9-11, they're in the regular season, will take on the number 1 Nighttime Ninjas, who went 14-6. And if you look at the Nighttime Ninjas, they had the MVP, Silver Slugger, Home Run Derby champion, 2 All-Stars. They're a really good team, and before the halfway point of the season, Kabaki was up in the race for the MVP and Cy Young. He was on fire to start the season. So if they can put all those elements together, they can take the Stallionaires in 3 games and win the series. But for the first 2 games, the Nighttime Ninjas will be without Sammy Kruchek, since he will be out of town for the weekend and won't be able to make the first 2 games. This could be big for the Stallionaires, because if they can take both games, that's going to put the Nighttime Ninjas on their backs and on their heels and having to win 3 straight. So this is going to be a big 2 games for the Nighttime Ninjas and see if they can split 1 or take at least 2. If they can take 1, that's a big victory for them. And going into the next few games, so let's see what would happen. And then, speaking of the Nighttime Ninjas, Ethan Harvey won the MVP this year, leading the league in home runs and RBIs. He's just been on fire all season. So he's going to be one of the players to watch out for. He's not my X Factor, though. I have my X Factors. Speaking of the Stallionaires started the season at 5-3, and they were looking really good. They were in first place all by themselves. It felt like their pitching was going to be dominant for the rest of the season, but ever since then, they've been 4-8. They've lost 8 of 12 games heading into the playoffs. It almost feels like both of these teams took different paths. The Nighttime Ninjas dominated with hitting during the regular season, and the Stallionaires coasted with their pitching just to get into the playoffs, because it came down to the last week of the season, and they had to win one of the game against the Lightning, just 1 game out of 4. And after that first one, it looked like they might have seen a couple of more games, but we didn't have to. They eventually won that 1 game and got into the playoffs. So it feels like both of these teams took 2 different paths to the playoffs this year. But now they're both 0-0, and all that matters is the first team to get to 7 wins it all. So that's the number everyone's looking out for, is the number 7. And speaking of the Ninjas, since this is they haven't won a playoff series, they're actually 1-6 in the playoffs since joining the league. So that's not a good start for them. They really need to get a couple of playoff wins, because if they want to win it all, they're going to have to improve on that record to win a GBL championship. While the Stallionaires / Anti-Heroes are 9-11, so they have shown they can win games during the playoffs and move on to the next round. So the Stallionaires have the experience going into a next round, and the Nighttime Ninjas just have the experience from this season, as Arbe, Kruchek, and Kubaki had a really good year to end the season and put the Nighttime Ninjas at first place. And then during the 4 games, they split the season series. The Ninjas never scored more than 2 runs in any game against the Stallionaires. If you look at the first game, the Nighttime Ninjas won 2-0. The second game, the Stallionaires won 3-0. In the game 3, the Stallionaires blew them out and won 12-2. Then in the 4th game, the Nighttime Ninjas won 2-1. So in all 4 games, the Nighttime Ninjas only scored 6 runs against the Stallionaires. They're going to have to do better than that, because they were the best hitting team in the league. If you look at their stats, they had the most home runs, RBIs, best batting average. They were the best hitting team in the GBL this season. They're going to need to continue to hit if they plan on beating the Stallionaires. It's pretty much strength against strength and weakness against weakness with these 2 teams. It's a classic numbers matchup. You got the Nighttime Ninjas hitting, being one of the best in the league, and then you have the Stallionaires pitching, being one of the best in the league. And now with Matt Kuna going into the playoffs, he's going to throw as hard as he possibly can and give it about 100%. So he's going to be the NWLA Matt Kuna we saw at NWLA. And that's a scary thought, because he did really good and he stifled a lot of hitters around the nation. So just imagine what he can do with a lawn chair and a wiffle ball that looks different than this. So it's going to be really tough for the Nighttime Ninjas to get on top of them, but they have proved they can hit tough pitching before, as they're the only team to beat Jim Tucker twice the Cy Young Award winner from the Gas House Gorillas in the season. So they can prove they can get him out of the game and move on to the next pitcher. So it's just going to be, during the season, it was just a little bit rougher for that team. So it's going to be a little tough for the Nighttime Ninjas. And for the Stallionaires, we're talking about weakness against weakness. Their hitting hasn't been as good. They did pick it up in the last 5 weeks of the season. And the Nighttime Ninjas pitching, speaking of weaknesses, is not very good. Their ERA is at 5 exactly. So Arve's been really good. Kruchek's been really good, but the ERA that's been hurting them is Kabaki. After starting the season really hot, he's been getting crushed by every team he played against. 4 runs or more in almost every game, except for one outing, I believe, where he came in and got the save. But he's going to have to find a way to get people out. Maybe do a little Mark Burley-esque type of pitching. Just pitch towards outs. It's probably the best way to do it. Try to get people under the ball. Try to get people in front of it. Try to just change the speeds on him to see if he can get the Stallionaires, Kuna Pasic, and Nate Bryan out. So we'll see what happens during the season. Not during the season, but during the series. It's going to be really rough if Kabaki can't control his pitching and starts walking people and gets into some trouble. The Stallionaires can win this series in 3. I don't believe that'll happen, though. I believe he'll turn it around. Because my X factor for the Ninjas to win this series is Mike Kabaki Jr. If he can be the Mike Kabaki Jr. we saw for the first 5 weeks of the season instead of the last 5 weeks of the season, the Nighttime Ninjas are going to have a good run in the playoffs, and they might win it all. He just needs to be the Kabaki from the first 5 weeks instead of the second 5 weeks. It's been 2 different players, essentially. As I almost had him, he was in the MVP conversation in like week 3 or 4. So we're going to have to see. He's our X factor there. And also, they're just going to have to keep hitting, especially with Kruchek out for the first 2 games this year. He is going to have to, and Arve, they're both going to have to hit with the Stallionaires and out-hit them. So, and they're going to have to hit Kuna or Bryan or Kuna Pasic while they're hitting and while the other team's on the mound. So it's going to be the Nighttime Ninjas. They have hit all year, so let's see what they can do. And then for the Stallionaires to win this series, my X factor, it should be no surprise, it's Matt Kuna. He threw different in the regular season, and then at the NWLA tournament, trying to win it all for our GBL, you definitely saw a different type of pitcher. So we're probably going to see the pitcher from the NWLA tournament in the playoffs. So he's going to be my X factor. If he can pitch and shut down the Nighttime Ninjas, they may win this series in 3 or 4 games. But if the Ninjas are able to get him out of the game within 3 innings, it's going to be a long day for the Stallionaires as well, because sometimes Kuna Pasic and Nate Bryan run into some trouble trying to get the save situations up by a few runs. So let's see what happens for both teams. So like I said, it's a classic numbers matchup. Weakness against weakness, strength against strength. Even though it may be tough for the Ninjas to find a way around the Stallionaires pitching, especially Matt Kuna, they have proved they have done it before against good pitchers like Jim Tucker and during the season other pitchers as well. So I believe the Nighttime Ninjas will hit their way to a series win, and I believe the Nighttime Ninjas will win in 5. So I predict for the World Series, the GBL World Series, that the Taka Drivers, the 2 seed, will take on the Nighttime Ninjas, the 1 seed. And it's going to be a very interesting playoffs because neither of these teams made it to a World Series. Taka Drivers have been in their first season. This will be the first time for the Nighttime Ninjas. So this could be a fun series, but that's what I got for my playoff preview and playoff predictions. After the few games this week, I'll discuss them and talk about how they went and see what happens through there. And then after the series are over, I will talk about the World Series as well. So expect a few more videos and short articles coming out during the playoffs. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Wiffle out, guys.
Mickey on the track.
Yeah, baby. Stop! Ay,